There's a lot of people who call themselves developers who do not develop anything. All they do is write a check. Those guys, I think, got crushed. People don't want affordable housing. People want less expensive housing. That is completely different than affordable housing. Because the garbage cans they're overloaded, they're too heavy. So I pick up a garbage can, I go, this isn't overloaded. What's gonna make this any lighter? It goes $100. I go, are you kidding me?
Have you ever felt frustrated trying to build a business, a career, or a big project? You're definitely not alone. On this episode of Developing Now, I'm talking with John Fiorito, an Army veteran turned real estate developer. John's journey takes him from military service to managing complex development deals, self-performing construction on his early projects, and weathering the 2008 market crash. He breaks down what it really takes to run a successful development and why the right operations person can make or break a project. John's story is full of hard-earned lessons on resilience, leadership, and building real estate the right way. If you're trying to build something meaningful in your own life or career, this conversation will likely inspire you and give you a clearer perspective on what it takes to becoming a successful entrepreneur. You don't self-perform?
I'm an owner's rep. I think it's conflict of interest to be a general contractor, the developer, the owner's rep, and everything else. So,
what do you mean? Or when you say owner's rep?
I mean, like 123 Main Street LLC has a membership of a series of individual investors, of the LPs, and the managing member is Point Capital Development. So I'm the managing member, and I represent the owner, which is 123 Main Street LLC, for the construction. But I contract out the building of it to a GC, so that I'm not writing myself a check for the developer fee, for the GC fee, for the marketing fee, for all that stuff. It gives maybe not transparency, but it gives a...
I mean, there's some complexity there, but if you disclose it, you're fine. No?
Of course, you can disclose anything to anybody until anybody sues you about whatever, then you have to share your disclosures. Right. But in my world, I self-performed 95 Montgomery Street, the Montauk House. It was my first actual real live...
It's next to that bank building, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That I self-performed because I couldn't afford the GC. And my head was down with my steel-toed shoes and helmet on for 18 months. And and that was 2011, 12, and 13-ish, right?
Right.
And I kind of missed the entire property grab that happened during that period of time. The great financial crisis.
Because you were busy?
Because I was busy carrying sheetrock and self-performing as a GC.
Right.
And so after that happened, which is unfortunate because like the 2008 calamity kind of bled in 2009 and 2010, when I was primarily doing condos, which is pretty much the best thing that ever happened to me, stopping condos and doing rentals. Being a landlord has worked for thousands of years. There's really no reason not to continue to be a landlord. When you build a condo and you sell it, it's gone.
Sure.
So when the for sale financing evaporated in 2008, 9, and 10, everybody went to rentals. I moved into rentals. It just has hence worked out. But while I had my head down building that one building, which was a significant build, property was getting scooped up in 9. People were going under, partnerships were collapsing.
Sure.
That money was floating around, didn't know how to place to land. And I'm sitting there with a plaid shirt on, like carrying buckets of spackle.
Right.
Wrong answer. So after that was over, 2013, which was Hurricane Sandy or Superstorm Sandy, that's what really invigorated the construction market again, because everybody had to move all their stuff out of the flood zone. So that's really what jump-started stuff. And then I moved over to Lafayette.
But we haven't seen that yet. We haven't seen another 2008 crises. So you feel like...
The crisis of 2008 is one thing. It was the follow-on malaise of 2009, 10, and 11. I mean, it went on forever. I mean, yes, Lehman and Bear Stearns went under and took a lot of people with them, and that was tough. But it was the first-time homebuyer tax credit stuff that was going 103% financing. All you needed was Social Security number and a heartbeat to get a loan. Bad idea, That's countrywide saw. Anyway.
You think it's coming back?
We'll see. People have short memories. I mean, I moved to Manhattan in the summer of 2002 to Lower Manhattan.
It's almost 20 years. Yeah. Can you imagine?
Yeah, almost. And people don't remember. I mean, 9/11 was less than a year old at that point. People said Lower Manhattan was dead, literally and figuratively. No one's ever coming back. They're still working on the pile. And people were selling their stuff in Battery Park City and the financial district. Now more people live in the financial district, than live in Midtown. I know that's not true, but anyway, people have short memories.
How did you get started in this business? Well, let's back up. First of all, where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
I'm from Westchester, New York, Irvington specifically. I'm the youngest of 5.
Okay.
Significantly, my siblings are 18, 17, 16, and 14 years older than I am.
Family.
Yes. I was surprised. My name is John. John means gift from God. It's what people named their kid in 1972 when you're 40 years old and you can smoke and drink while you're giving birth. So that I was born alive was a big deal.
That's great. So, all right. So you grew up there and you went to school. Like, where'd you go to school?
Went to West Point. I left the house at 18, went into the Army. I came out of the Army at 32, landed in Cincinnati.
Cincinnati?
In manufacturing. Yes, Cincinnati. A lot of Italians in Cincinnati, by the way. The Queen City. I was looking for a job to transition from the Army, and a buddy of mine's dad had a company, and he said, come work for me. And I really didn't have much of a choice because there wasn't a lot working around here in the New York metro area where I'm from. Unless you're a professional or, I don't know. I just didn't have any options here. Right. I got offered one job, get out of the military. So I was in the Army for 4 years at West Point, 10 years active duty. I was commander of troops, 3 deployments, disabled veteran. I got one job offer. It was from DHL, working 3rd shift at Newark Airport.
You were disabled? Is that what you said?
Yeah, 25% disability.
From what?
It's a HIPAA question. You can't ask me that.
Why not?
Actually, so what I tell people mostly is that being in the Army and being deployed and all that stuff for 14 years, it removed my ability to put up with people's bullshit, which is definitely a disability in the civilian sector. You have to look at people and tell them that they know what they're talking about. I have a problem with that. No, it's lung capacity. I've got a breathing disorder.
And that happened while you were in combat?
No, I was never in combat. People don't really mess with, I was in tanks. Generally, people do not shoot in American tanks. So no, I was deployed to the Middle East once and to the Balkans twice. The Balkans was a peacekeeping mission. As long as you didn't get in between the Serbs and the Albanians trying to kill each other, you were generally okay. And then the Middle East deployment was apparently the batteries in Saddam Hussein's GPSs went bad because he crossed some imaginary line that he wasn't supposed to cross and came within a couple miles of Kuwait. And, we deployed the 1st Cavalry Division, which was pretty impressive. Being in the Army, it's just giant bureaucracy. But when the red light goes on, it is amazing how quickly the Army can move. We were 5,000 soldiers stationed at Fort Hood, Texas, which is in the middle of Texas, and we were in Kuwait on the border of Iraq in 96 hours with hundreds of tanks, thousands of soldiers. Amazing. It was amazing. The more amazing thing is that we got there. We're all wearing green camouflage because that's what you wear in the States. We're wearing green, no desert camo. So we get there, we get on the border. Apparently they change the batteries in the GPS, and the Republican Guard turns around and goes back to Baghdad. And now we flew over there under contingency funds because it was a war. It was going to be a war. But it was October. It was the end of the fiscal year. So we converted from contingency funds to operational funds. And it was the end of the operational year. Therefore, there was no money left. So we had to sit in the desert for 3 months until the appropriations bill was. We sat in green camouflage and green tanks in the desert. We did a lot of training and stuff like that.
Waiting for funding.
Waiting for funding to return. And we actually returned. To return to Texas. Which is kind of funny, but it was phenomenal. It was a phenomenal experience. The whole war thing was that they shot a couple cruise missiles over our head from the Persian Gulf, blew up some stuff. The Iranian or the Saddam's guys, the Iraqis put their batteries back in their GPSs. They turned around, they left, and that was it. But we did a lot of training while we were there. It's kind of cool to see that part of the world.
Wow. All right. So then you get back, and you're looking for work.
All right, so I got out of the Army. So at the 10-year mark, I knew I wanted to do something else. My last gig in the Army was teaching ROTC at Hofstra University. Fun, going through West Point as a commissioning source. I was on that side of it, and then actually being the producer of officers through the cadets through Cadet Command was kind of cool as well. So I got to kind of see both sides of that. Pretty amazing, especially in the New York metro area. New York is not really known for producing a tremendous amount of military officers and such.
That's fascinating. So I always wonder, the transition from that world to the private sector? What is that like?
Oh, so hard. I mean, that's why I needed a transition job. You don't even speak civilian. We speak in acronyms that you speak Army. And so my first job was working at a manufacturing facility in Cincinnati. It was more of an assembly facility, and I learned things like P&L, and things of that nature. So I honestly didn't know nothing about that. On my resume, I have in charge of commanded hundreds of men in combat situations with gazillions of dollars worth of Army equipment. I mean, if I break a tank, it's not like they're taking it out of my paycheck.
Right.
So,
and do they prepare you for that when you come out?
Not at the 10-year mark. So I got it as a captain at the 10-year mark. They do a good job transitioning officers at a later mark, where if you retire from the military, I didn't retire, I resigned. You have to be in for 20 to be to retire. At the 20-year mark, they do give you some help. They link you up with a civilian mentor, and you start learning civilian speak before you actually transition to the civilian world. I found it very difficult. I went from a job that I thought I was doing something at. The Army, it's been around for 250 some odd years. It doesn't really care if I'm in it or not. But when you're there, you're doing a mission that's bigger than yourself. You're surrounded by people of like-mindedness, doing something for the greater good, God, country, and the American people type stuff. When you come out and you become a civilian, not so much. So it was definitely a transition from making widgets. I was making widgets in Cincinnati. I was fighting for democracy for the first 10 years, but now I'm making widgets in Cincinnati.
Literally making widgets?
We were working. We subcontracted out from the limited brand, so we were doing Bath and Body Works, Victoria's Secret, and things of that nature. I mean, we're making candle baskets. I said I transitioned from making the world safe for American capitalism to expand to the forest reaches, to making gift baskets for husbands who forget about their anniversary to swing by a Bath and Body Works to grab a lotion basket for their parent.
What a difference!
For their wife. Yeah, definitely different. Took a little while to transition to that. So I was doing that for about 2 years before you're about to ask practically why I got into development. I was at a destination wedding in Cancun for a classmate of mine from West Point that I linked up with while I was working in the Army in Manhattan. And so I go down to this beach wedding in Cancun, and I link up with another buddy of mine. He's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, I'm trying to keep forklift drivers from getting high in the parking lot during lunch and driving into assembly people in Cincinnati. What are you doing? He's like, "Well, I'm starting this company, and we're going to do this real estate stuff in Hoboken." So he goes, "You want to join?" I said, it was a big deal because I'm from New York, and as a New Yorker, I make fun of all things Jersey. So doing something in New Jersey was tough. That's a big leap right from the get-go. So I got over that relatively quickly. And I said, sure, I have no problem. I'd love to work for you. He's like, well, you can't really work. You're not really working for me. You're working with me. I said, okay, I don't really understand the nuance. He goes, well, here's the nuance. We're not cash flow positive. I can't pay you. And on top of that, you're going to have to buy into the partnership. So I'm going to take all the money that you have in the world, and I'm going to take it to buy into my partnership, to give you a job working in Hoboken that doesn't pay. And maybe it'll work. Maybe it won't. This is 2005, 6-ish time frame.
Interesting.
So I said, all right, that's a great idea. So something I would never do today. I mean, just knowing
you were young at the time. I
was 34. I mean, I was restarting my life though. I mean, my life was, again, I left the house at 18, went into the Army and came out of the Army at 33.
Right.
Became a civilian at 33, worked in the civilian sector for a bit, and then went off into the private equity world. I mean, private equity, small p, small e. It sounds sexy, but it's not really that. But it is private equity. It is other people's. It's a friends and family connection. Friends and family.
But is that how you saw it back then with this venture in Hoboken?
No idea.
What was he pitching to you? Was it a real estate development deal? Was it?
So he ran a merchant bank and had 5 fingers of it, and one of the fingers was going to be real estate, and they needed an operations guy. So they had finance guys who could do spreadsheets that'd make the lights dim in the room, but you needed a person on the ground to actually do stuff. I am the person on the ground. That's kind of my forte of what I do, is get things done. And that's how I started off here. And then we parlayed the Hoboken project into a series of buildings in Jersey City through the same seller. who was liquidating his portfolio. Jose Perez, who was a big deal in the 70s and 80s in Jersey City. I don't know if you can Google him. I don't know if that actually exists, but Mr. Perez was kind of a big deal around here for a long
He was
period.
what, a real estate developer or
He was
investor?
the don of the Puerto Rican mafia downtown. I mean, he just made
Jose Perez.
There you go. I feel like, have you ever had Arthur Pronti on this?
No,
Talking to Arthur, you know Arthur, obviously.
no.
You don't know who Arthur Pronti is?
I mean, I heard of his name.
Okay, so like Arthur would tell you about how he would buy blocks of buildings from the city for $1.
Arthur Pronti from here.
From here, yes. How many Arthur Prontis do you think?
Pronti Construction.
Yes.
Yes, I know Pronti. Okay.
Okay,
I know
so
Arthur. Does he still drive around in that van?
I don't know
around
what
Jersey
he
City?
still collects rent at 90 years old or whatever he's doing. But Mr. Perez,
You made him sound like this like famous author or something, but he's it's Arthur-
no,
it's Arthur
he is a
Pronti.
hard-knuckled real estate
There you
developer
go. There it is.
/ landlord who collects rent daily or monthly
He's
by
on the
himself.
ground.
He is definitely on the
He's
ground.
on the
But
ground.
he would tell me about I did a project next to his property and he was breaking my chops on it most of the time. But Mr. Perez and Pronti at point, in the 70s, you could buy a building for $1. And so he would tell me about these stories about bringing a check for 10% of the purchase price, which would be 10 cents, to City Hall to put the down payment on the building. We talk about affordable housing, building, taking row homes down on York Street or on 6th Street or on any other of the numbered streets. Pretty amazing. Mr. Perez owned a lot of buildings throughout the city. So we started buying them off of him and condo converting them in Hamilton Park. Was my first start. First time I saw you was I was on 3rd Street doing something. You were on your hands and knees at the door entry doing
I was
some kind of...
I was also carrying sheetrock. with
Yes, you were doing some kind of mosaic work on some entry. Like you were looking
On
up at
3rd
me.
Street. On 3rd Street.
2nd Street, 3rd Street, 1st Street, something like that.
okay.
It would have been, I don't know, that would have been circa 2009, 10-ish.
One of those like 8-unit, 10-unit
Yes.
buildings, railroad apartments,
Something like that.
small ones. Yeah.
Practically speaking, that's how I got into development. I kind of stumbled into it at
So you were basically like flipping. I mean,
Yes.
not houses, but you were.
It was kind of, it was
you were converting,
multifamily.
Yeah, you were converting buildings into condos, flipping the condos.
Yes.
Essentially.
In the 2005, 6, 7 time period around the financial crisis, which was everything was doing fine at that point.
And you were doing that with that company
That group.
that you started with.
Well,
what was the name of it?
Point Capital Partners. And so I spun off my own, we broke up, and I spun off my own company, Point Capital
And you
Development.
did that project on 6th Street, right? There was a massive like
208 to 2
bunch of buildings there.
200 to 208 6th Street was
How many units was that?
540. 40 individual apartments, 5.
And did you
5
buy off of?
Mr. Perez?
You did. Same.
Great guy.
That was the deal source.
He was at that point the deal
guy.
source. No, it was these were all.
Yeah.
I mean, they were tenements. I mean, people. They were. He would take barter. This was verbal lease, cash payments, no renovation. I mean, units had to be vacated, gutted.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah, it was run down in a sense, right? I mean, this was like early Jersey City housing stock that was like old and
1880s.
historic.
I mean, it was original 1880s type stuff.
Yeah.
But it was a deal source. So that's how we initially started with that. But I started my own company in 2009. So I spun off from the Point Capital Partners guys and became Point Capital Development. Point being West Point, Capital being in search of, and development being obvious. And that's what I do.
But just to go back
Yeah.
to your early Hoboken days, that first deal that you did, how small was it?
8 units.
It was 8 units. Okay.
Same thing. The deal was to vacate it, which was kind of my job, and then condo convert it, do all the infrastructure type stuff
Right.
for the deal, but be the person on the ground.
Got it.
They would hand me the spreadsheet and say, "This is what's got to work. This is how much it has to cost. This is what we got to do to it." And I said, "Okay." And then,
All right. So then
I'm the executor.
So you grew from the 8 units, then you're doing like more units, like 40 units, things
Multiple
like that.
8 units.
I see.
The 6 unit, 8 unit thing is, it was a nice, but the one I GC'd myself was 95 Montgomery Street, the Montauk House. That's the original name of the building from the 1880s. I was kind of really into history at that point, which was pretty cool. And that was only 18 units, but we took the back of the building off, extended it 30 feet. We landed another story on top of an existing building, and then had to redo the structural of the building, from the basement up. Screw piles, which hadn't been used really extensively in Jersey at that point, underneath a building that already existed. We had to remove the ground floor assembly. So when you were standing on the basement slab, you were looking up at the second story floor ceiling assembly. So what, 30 some odd feet in the air, all being precariously balanced on columns that ran down the center of the building, which we cabled across to make sure that the guy with the pile driver didn't knock one of the columns out and bring the building down on top of our head. It was a difficult build. Probably why I had my head down the entire time, like trying to execute that rather than looking for other deals. But I got my operational chops in the Hoboken, Mr. Perez kind of deals. I got my construction chops.
Was that a Perez deal too?
No, this was something. This was a Laser Miklovich deal. It's another name of guys who was doing stuff downtown back in the day. Good guy, by the way. Still one of my investors today.
Now, when you did that deal, you had to set up like an LLC. You were the developer and the GC.
Yes. So I was the developer. I had initially hired a GC. The numbers came in from the bank, what they would not fund. They could not afford the GC. So unfortunately,
it didn't pencil out with that GC.
No, I had to let them go, and then I self-performed it.
Got it.
Just to keep it within the numbers. Because it was tight. I'd say 2010, 11, 12, 13.
Well, yeah,
that
construction was expensive.
Yeah, it was mad tight.
I mean, it's kind of like what we're going through now.
People were looking for jobs. I got the rat showed up on like my front doorstep for a 18-unit building.
Really?
The labor guys came over. I'm like, why are you breaking my chops on this building? It's 18 units. It's like, yeah, well, we need to work. I'm like, it's 18.
Yeah,
it's an 18
because you
unit.
were closer to the waterfront. That's what it was.
It's an 18-unit rehab, though. I mean, it's really not a tremendous amount of work here. And I had to fire the GC, so no, nothing's going. So the rat, they found a different place to put the rat.
The rat deflated.
It just moved. It moved to a different spot because I think I walked them through the building. I'm like, really? You're gonna bust my chops on this?
Yeah, of course.
They kind of went away.
So you got through that. 18 units sold out, obviously.
Yeah, that was rental building.
Did you have any challenges between? I mean, you had the LLC, and you talk about like sometimes there's a conflict between developer being your own GC and your investors. Did you have any challenges there?
Not on that one. Again, I had the wash, rinse, repeat process going on the condominiums on Erie Street, 6th Street, 7th Street, 3rd Street. Had done a tremendous, had turned a lot of 8 units over. And they were all condos, so they all sold. So people got to see money relatively quickly when you sell something.
Sure.
You also get to see a lot of taxes, by the way, when you sell something quickly.
Yep. Was it under a year?
No, it wasn't under a year.
It wasn't.
No.
Yeah, capital gains, not too bad.
It wasn't bad. But you gave a lot of money back to Uncle Sam. On those projects. So I had my reputation was growing amongst my investor group at that point, which started with 2 guys and has expanded to, my first investor. So the guy I went to the Cancun destination wedding for, his dad was my first investor who gave me $100,000 to go do something. He's like, I'm giving you more money than you're worth, and you're probably going to screw this up, but I've known you since you're 18 years old, so I'm going to give you a shot.
Yeah, sure. Friends and family.
And that's what it was. And that went from one to the other, to the other, to the other. So, it's definitely grown from there. But back then I had to give everything away. I mean, I didn't make any money. I started working in this profession at 34, 35. I didn't make any money until I was 43, maybe.
Interesting.
Nothing. I mean, because I had to sell all my equity to my investors,
Well, how old were you at that point when you were doing the Montauk House?
The Montauk House would have been 2012. I'm born in 1972. Do the math.
Okay.
40.
Don't ask me to do that math.
40.
I only do a performance. I can't do that kind of math.
I got you. So 40-ish or so. But that didn't, that's sold in 2019.
Well, you were only in it for sounds like you were in about 7 years at that point. So were you just getting investors, or were you always getting investors?
No, I've always had investors. No,
a lot of guys don't know that to get investors.
It's the same
from the
guys.
beginning. Unless you walked into that mindset with your friend who was in Cancun, right?
Okay, so when you start making money, when you start making other people money, which is I don't know. Again, let me go back a little bit. Like, I didn't make any money for myself. I mean, we took a stipend on things, but it really wasn't any money.
Payday.
You pay off, correct. You pay off other people. So that creates kind of the buzz and the...
Yeah, you make it a priority to make sure your investors are making money.
Yes, and then they tell their friends, and then eventually it kind of comes back.
Absolutely.
And that's really how it is. I mean, I have a stable now of probably 60 people that I can email. Any 12 of them will come back at any one time and do something. And it's the same group. And if you've been in from the get-go, you have first priority over somebody who's new. It's been working out. And then the Montauk House beget that I moved over to Lafayette. I thought that was the next frontier. I thought in 2013, I thought downtown Jersey City was overdone.
Right.
Dumbass. Obviously, I didn't know what I was talking about. Who do I know about real estate? I was taking on the mantra of the old Jersey City people who I had met 10 years prior. Said, I cannot believe you're buying those buildings from that guy. They're never going to make any money. Yeah. I showed them. Now I'm leaving downtown thinking it's way too expensive. Going, what dumbass is going to roll into downtown and buy this building for this much money? Apparently, I was the dumbass.
Yeah, well, it's hard to get into that mindset.
I'm also
you get in so early, and you're buying things so cheap in the early 2000s.
Things were inexpensive, and it was easy to build stuff here. You know, it's become much more difficult to do anything. I say it all the time. I mean, it's harder now to do something than it was 20 years ago, and now I know everybody.
I mean, the margins are slimmer, I feel, in downtown. They really are.
The margins are impossible at this point. With financing at the rate that it's at, the cost of construction, and the delays of taking something on, and I don't want to listen to a political conversation. We'll keep us go back to development, but like that time frame, you could used to be able to do something in a year and a half. Now it's 3 years. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Especially when you're sitting on other people's money, that you owe them money on their money while you're sitting on their money, right?
Sure.
So things become expensive quickly, and you go from hero to zero over the course of 6 months. When something goes sideways for 6 months, it blows your pro forma, and then you're you know,
I mean, that's
and that is where your character shows. Then you have to work it out. I mean, I'm involved in a deal up on West Side that has been going on since 2006. It was my first deal that I got involved in with the previous group that I have been husbanding through the process. Mm-hmm. We are hitting our 20-year anniversary on that deal.
What, you're developing it?
It was condo conversion. It was a non-evict condo conversion. And so the great financial crisis certainly crushed that. I mean, the great financial crisis crushed the non-primary markets, like anything that was emerging. Mm-hmm. Like in that point, you know, West Side was, people were moving up to McGinley Square and West Side and everything. That didn't exist. And then after the financial crisis, everything recoiled back to downtown and back into Manhattan. And so like you're in a vacuum out there. So we got stuck. But I've been working that deal diligently, you know, for almost 20 years now, which is, you know, keeping the lights on essentially.
Wow.
But, you know.
Yeah, interesting.
They still pick up their phones when I call them though.
Yeah. So then you went to Montauk, and then you went to this massive undertaking in
the Baker Building.
The Bergen Lafayette, right?
Oh, it wasn't massive at that time. It was the Baker Building was a vacant factory. You know, I felt that, you know, I'm going to bring my Army stuff back.
How many units was that, the Baker Building?
83. Could have been 260 some odd based on density. I
thought that was a new build. I thought it was ground up.
It is ground up.
Okay, because you said vacant building. So you knock it down?
All of that stuff over there started as vacant warehouses, vacant warehouses, demolition, environmental cleanup, and all that stuff. Right. We bought that from a group out of Boston who had planned on doing something huge with it and decided they weren't going to do something huge with it.
And how did you find that?
I sent a realtor out knocking on doors. I said, I like this area. So I'm going to go back to the military aspect of certain things. There's like principles of war. One of them is key terrain. And if you look at a map of Bergen Lafayette, I just call it Lafayette because Bergen includes other stuff, but I'm going to call it Lafayette. If you look at a Google map at 5,000 feet down on it, it's constrained on all sides by geographic boundaries. It's got the Turnpike extension. It has the light rail. It has the Hudson River. It's got the PSE&G substation. It is this own little enclave. And what drives vertical development, which is expensive development, is physical constraints, right? So you look at Hong Kong or San Francisco, and you compare that to Dallas or Atlanta. Mm-hmm. Dallas and Atlanta has urban sprawl. If it's too expensive to do something, you just move. Keep going out. Mm-hmm. Other cities like San Francisco or a big city, or Manhattan on an island, you have to go vertically. So that becomes more expensive. Barrier to entry becomes more difficult. People were scared of that area, like physically scared of that area, you know, thinking it was kind of hood. If you look at it, the means of egress getting to it's tough to get in and out of that enclave. There's a lot of dead end streets.
It is, yeah.
And so if you believe what the police say, people don't like to be doing crimes on dead end streets. Well, occupied dead end streets because there's nowhere to go, when the blue lights show up. So, and all my Sidham, Garibrandt, and they're all at the end of dead end streets, interestingly enough, all over in that's just by happenstance.
So you felt that was an advantage? Because of safety?
Key terrain. I'm going to go back to holding key terrain is key. And so it happened to be those buildings were at the end of dead end streets. That's just by happenstance. But it's worked out.
Yeah, because it's a quiet street and
correct.
Right.
Easier to work on a quiet street when you control that end of the street. Like if I was mid-block, I would have had to keep egress open for the end of the block to get out to the main drag. But when you own the middle of the block all the way to the end of it, it's easier to close the street off. You're not upsetting people, cars parked, and all that good stuff. So it was a lot easier to work.
And there was a lack of transportation there relative to the downtown area. Did you feel any concern that you may not hit a market?
Absolutely.
I mean,
so
I know people thought you were crazy.
I'm famously quoted in the New York Times. Our former mayor, Steve, I might differ with him on political stuff, but he had this idea or what his goal, this vision to make Jersey City the best mid-sized city in the United States. Totally down with that goal because that helps me out as a developer, building stuff. I want people to want to live here. He wants people who want to live here. So we were completely aligned on that. And he also had, the idea that you had to move development off the waterfront. I mean, it sounds silly in 2026 to say that today, but in 2011, this is a different story. I mean, there was nothing happening that didn't happen on the waterfront or in the downtown or in Ward E. That's completely different than anybody who fails to study history or doomed to repeat its mistakes. There was really nothing happening off the waterfront. The Baker Building was one of the first. It was easily the first building in Lafayette, Class A building in Lafayette that was being built off the waterfront.
Especially to that size.
Right. So the administration was kind of happy to see money being spent in Ward F, now currently Ward A, but in Ward F at that time had not seen a lot of development going on. So there's an article, there's a journalist interviewing Mayor Fulp at that time about downtown development, and he sends her my way to go see what's going on in Bergen Lafayette. So she spends 3 hours with me, and we're walking around. I'm showing the site, showing the Baker Building and whatnot. I get a text from the mayor the next, 2 weeks later when he gets a pre-read of the article. He's like, cannot believe you just said this. I have no idea. So he sends me the article. And so my quote is, developer Fiorito wonders how to attract young women, end quote. The entire thing. 3 hours I'm talking to this person.
That's the only thing they quoted
only
you
thing
on.
she pulled out of the whole thing. And my point was, building a Class A building in an emerging market, how am I going to get anybody besides young college guys to kind of wander over here down this dark dead end street to go live here? How am I going to get your entry level, professionals, young women to leave the light rail and walk down 3 blocks to this dead end street? How am I going to get that to happen? I'm concerned about that. To which she distilled down into, how does Fiorito look for girls or something like that? Wow. So it was pretty funny amongst my friends. My wife thought it was funny. The mayor thought it was funny. So that's my 15 minutes of fame in the New York Times is quoted as that. But interestingly enough, that building filled up mostly with women. I have 2 daughters, and I think guys will stay on their parents' couch until they kick them off the couch, whereas women want to get out of the house as quickly as possible. So actually that building ironically speaking, filled up with women before it filled up with men.
Was it easy? Was it as easy to get investors into that building as it was to get the tenants there?
The investors were fine. People followed me over there. They Google Earth the site. They said, "Are you going to give away a gun? With your lease signing?"
So they had some concerns.
Absolutely, when you Google Earth that space, that area, it looks rough, but. Again, it's kind of all bark, no bite. This is all vacant, light, medium industrial, surrounded by low density homes, 2 families or 3 families. Once the industry left, a lot of the people and the jobs left, a lot of the people left. And so very low density area. So again, optically, all bark. Realistically, no bite. There wasn't a lot of thing going on there. And the neighborhood really wanted some development, unlike today.
Yeah.
But the neighborhood was really pushing for something positive to happen down there. And I think the Baker building certainly delivered it. I'm going to take mad credit on that. I mean, that was the Renaissance project for that neighborhood.
Sure.
Everybody sat around in Bergen. I mean, all that land has been owned by somebody for a long time. All the buildings that you see over there, they owned that land for a bit. Everybody was waiting to see what was going to happen. What was going to happen with the Baker building? Were people going to go over there? Were people going to spend the money? We discounted our rents probably 30% below downtown because I know where we were at. We were in the end of a dead end street in Bergen Lafayette. So we discounted the rents to that. We could. I'm a sole operator. Not a lot of mouths to feed, so we could make that happen. Built it smartly, built it leanly. People showed up, and then a year after we opened, people started going in the ground. We toured a lot of other developers.
You were the proof of concept.
Yeah, a lot of other developers toured that building, asking for rent rolls and seeing things, and I wasn't overly. It's not overly hard. To be a developer, you just got to kind of stick to it.
After you got through that and you had that proof of concept, you kind of learned a lesson that you can essentially go anywhere in Jersey City. Not anywhere, but you can go and expand to other places that you didn't think or others didn't think would work out.
Agreed. I mean, it was definitely 100%.
Because you're, I watch what you do on other projects, and I see you have that pioneer mindset. Going to areas where people don't go.
Pioneering and opportunistic. I am not set on, I'm not a downtown developer who won't move somewhere else. I mean, we started in Ward E, but I've had a project in every ward. And you go where the deal is and you see if you can make the deal work. And, in most cases you can, but I don't have any prejudice against any other specific ward. It just seems like the opportunity, and again, in Bergen Lafayette and the Ward F at that point was there. And again, geographically speaking, I tell you, when you look at it, it's kind of this bulge that's surrounded by stuff. It's also on the same topographic level as downtown, which is a big deal. When you leave downtown on Newark Avenue and you go underneath the Turnpike extension by Healy's Bar, you're going up a hill. You're physically leaving downtown. You feel like you're going up a hill under a bridge. It changes. Yeah. It's the same thing when you're on Grand Street and you're going, by the hospital, or you're going under the Turnpike. Again, you're leaving downtown. Bergen Lafayette is on the same level as, geographically, topographically, is the same level as downtown. So when you cross over, like from Liberty Harbor North over what was the pedestrian bridge, but now is a vehicle bridge, you're not really leaving anything. It's merely an extension. So I really thought there was going to be value in that because people don't like change on stuff at all. Crossing a bridge isn't that much of a change. Going underneath a bridge and going up a hill, that's a different story.
Right.
So I felt like that area was going to take off. Should I have bought more at the time? Probably. It was definitely proof of concept. Like the Baker building zoning could have taken 265 units. We built 83 because I didn't have the money. By any stretch of the imagination. I was scraping. I was doing 4 pitches a day to raise the money for the Baker building.
How much did you have to raise there?
$5 million, which is a lot of money.
It still is, how many investors?
Still is a lot of money, like maybe 30 at this point. Slightly different now. I mean, again, success begets success. So like now that 60 people is down to 15. I could probably raise a bunch of money if need be. It's tough competing with the market. I mean, when the S&P goes up 25% in a year, it's tough.
That's the challenge today.
It is very tough.
That's the challenge today when you're offering 12% preferred return on something.
My deals are 50-50. It's been 50-50 from day one I started. They've never not, technically they're 100-0. They're 100 to the investor until they get their money back, plus any accrued interest that I owe them. And then it shifts to 50-50 as the profit share. Guys that do 80-20s or 90-10s or any of that kind of stuff.
Those are bigger projects. High rise, right?
I know that there's, I don't know. there's a lot of nefarious stuff that goes on. I think that putting waterfalls in your deals. I'm not undermining one of your deals, am I? I hope not.
Are you?
I'm not undermining one of your deals, am I?
No, not at all. Not at all.
So I just like.
I mean, everybody has different philosophies. Like I do 50-50 deals.
Right.
I also do preferred return deals. I have deals where I just offer a straight 12% preferred return. We keep 100%.
It's a good deal if you can get it.
It's a good deal if you can get it. It's also risky in a sense. It could get risky on my end because we're all equity. So it's really about measuring the risk versus the reward.
I say in the 50-50, I'm aligning myself with the investors. If I'm 80, if I'm 20-80 and giving them all the juice and I'm taking a developer fee, it makes me, I don't know. It says to me, to the market, that I don't really have a lot of faith in what's going to happen on this project.
Well, I see it as, different investors have different appetites, right? Some guys want a straight interest. They want to sleep at night. They don't want to take a market risk. They don't want to take construction risk. Give me 12%, I'm happy. Other guys, they want ownership.
If you can keep giving them 12%, that works. But if your deal goes sideways, you're not giving them the 12% either.
Well, the only way we can really achieve that is when you're buying stuff, during a crisis, right? Like
that's what I missed.
In 2010.
That's correct. And I missed it.
I bought some stuff. I was able to do that. I was able to hit 20% returns on preferred returns and keep 100% on the back end, which turned out well. But that's not always there. You can't do that right now.
No, you can't do it right now.
So you have to shift with the markets, right? You have to shift depending where you are in the cycle. And right now, where are we at the cycle?
We're at a point where everybody's got their hands in their pocket, I think. I mean, I'm in a wait and see mode at the moment. I mean, we manage everything that we build. Therefore, we're a landlord. So that works. That kind of evens out the bumps. I mean, the highs and lows of developments are somewhat evened out by being a landlord. So right now,
that also keeps investors safe.
Yes. And what I do is we improve our property, improve the experience for our residents. There's some softness in the market. There's no doubt. People want more for less, and there's a lot of stuff that's on the market that's out there, and there's more stuff coming. So you got to be competitive price wise. You have to be competitive amenity wise, but not stupidly. You got to be smart. It's like anything. I mean, the market 2004 through 8 was shooting fish in a barrel. Any idiot can make money in real estate, and they did. And then things got really hard. Things have since got harder post-COVID. So the dumb money usually goes home with an empty pocket. The smart money is, I think, doing things methodically. Operational excellence is the key. Making sure your buildings are running correctly, your job site's running correctly, efficiencies where you can get them. And sometimes the best deal is the deal you don't do. Truly.
100%.
Rates are expensive, man. Listen, when you start, interest rates went up like 200 basis points in 2022. You could get a loan, a construction loan for 5%, 5 and 6% maybe, in January 22. By June of 22, rates had gone up so much that by the end of the year, it's going to be 9.5% of construction. When your construction interest budget goes from 5% to 9%,
stop.
You're done.
Yeah,
you're getting eaten alive.
Yeah.
And you still got to bring the project to market.
Yep.
And then you've got to lease it and you've got to refinance. I mean, the execution risk of being stuck, being sideways on a deal for 3 years is tough.
Especially if you have a high entry basis on your land.
Right. Well, which was everybody was doing, right? When I started in Jersey City 20 years ago, it was like, Jersey what? Is that near Hoboken?
I always like how New Yorkers come to Jersey City. They cross the Pat station. They get in there. They're like, what is this place?
Listen, I'm one of those guys. I'm a New Yorker. Again, I mock things that are Jersey. I say I came over here for the job, and then I can't afford the toll to get back across the Hudson River to the right side of the river. Again, I go operational excellence. If you are conservative in what you're doing, you'll be okay. You live long enough, you make money in real estate.
That's true.
As long as you don't go out of business, during the process. And I think not going out of business is, I don't think you become overnight rich by any stretch of the imagination. I think you hoe your row or sow your row or whatever the farming term is for that. You do that for 20 years, everything kind of works itself out.
I would say as long as you don't give up.
Correct. You got to get up.
Because some people go out of
development's
business.
Not hard.
Right.
I mean, I'll go write a book on development. Show up. That's all you got to do. Every day you got to get up and you have to execute relentlessly. Excellence in execution, which is my gig. I mean, what I do. I would agree with that too. You got to roll with the times and how things change.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of things that change. People's perceptions change. I mean, when I started 20 years ago, it was, if you build it, the mantra, at the city was like, come here and build it. It's okay. You can do that.
Right.
That has totally changed today. And for a certain time, that's what, I don't want to make fun of Bayonne or anything like that. But again, if I'm on my track, I'm making fun of things from Jersey. If it's from Bayonne, leave it alone. That's how it was for a long period of time.
Right.
But we stopped development for a period of a couple years in 2015, 16-ish or so. And all this development activity moved to Bayonne.
Yeah.
And
A
really
lot.
blew out a lot of it looks incredible down there. I went to a fundraising event in Bayonne for a Jersey City person. Like,
Is that right?
yes. I was like, why are we doing,
there are parts of
why
Bayonne
are
that
we
look like
doing this
Bergen
in
Lafayette.
Oh, it's beautiful though. Yeah. Why are we doing this in Bayonne? Why is there a fundraiser for this happening in Bayonne and not in Jersey City? Because we sent all that development to Bayonne because we stopped. Because it was no longer come here and build something.
Right.
I don't know, it's silly. But it ebbs and flows, and it came back for a bit, and people moved.
So after the Baker building, you went into how many units did you start building after that? Like, take me through that timeline between then and now.
So I build as of right. Once you ask for a variance, when you ask the government for something,
especially now,
especially when you ask the government for something, the government's going to ask you for something, and I don't know if I feel like paying that price. So the next building was Garabrandt. That's 80 units. That's the as of right height or as of right density for that building. Then it was Brighton Varick, which is another excitement thing that started as a micro housing project that then people did not like the idea about micro housing.
Was that micro housing?
It started off as micro housing. Okay. Started off at 88 units of micro housing and ended up as 40 conventional units. And then from there, 361 Newark Avenue with Billy Santamoro, we did that. And then back over to Bergen Lafayette for 130 Monitor Street.
How many units? 130?
130 was 70 units, and then we just built 70. Then we did phase 2 of it. So that building is now combined to 140 units, done in 2 phases because I was acquiring the land during the process. Again, whatever as of right is at the moment. And so that has been in the 80 unit or 40, interestingly, 80 unit or 40 unit kind of category. 361 Newark was 40 units. Brighton Varick is 40 units. Baker's 80. Garabrandt's 80. And then Monitor was 70 and 70. And then I still do other stuff on the side, the 6 families and the 8 families and do renovation.
Oh, you still do that?
I do. It's kind of my 401k thing. It's not open. It's a private partnership. It's not open to everybody. It's not with my main investors.
Okay. I didn't know that.
It's got because it's a occupied residential value add, it's slow.
Yeah.
So that's not something I want to get investors involved in and pay them for their money while I'm, working on a project.
And do you put GCs on that, or do you have your own crews?
That's mostly self-performed because really it's...
You're not holding sheetrock still, are you?
I'm not holding shit. I'm getting old. I'm not holding shit. I do a lot more stuff than I probably should.
Those spackle buckets are getting heavy.
That is correct. I miss physical therapy this morning for you because, I do have a shoulder problem from shoveling ice. I shouldn't be doing that. I definitely should not be doing that.
Right. Well, in Jersey City, you have to.
Unbelievable. Talk about operational excellence. My God.
I had to throw that out there.
I know. It's okay. A little amount eventually. That's the plan.
So altogether, in terms of units, how many units are you managing?
400 and change at the moment. I have had...
Those are all under your portfolio, under your investment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, I started with condos early on, and we rolled through a couple hundred condos. I would say it's probably 20 projects thus far from new construction. The bigger stuff, new construction is all recent. All the older stuff, the smaller stuff, rehabs and reconstructions and such.
So going back to as of right versus variances, why don't you try to get variances? Do you feel like it's just a hassle?
It's a hassle.
That's it?
I'm about speed to market and fooling around with something for a long period of time.
Taking that risk.
Execution risk is tough, and market risk is, that's the guys. We bought a building, 60 Erie Street, in August of 2008, 30 days before Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns went under. And our equity partner in that project like threw up the red flag. Oh my God, liquidate the project. We need our money back right now. The world's coming to an end. So you can go, from in August of 2008, the world was, cruising in the real estate world. And then what brought it down was the real estate world, obviously.
Yeah.
And so that was tough. So you never know. So I'm in the ground, out of the ground, hand over the keys as quickly as physically possible.
And is that because you're carrying the land? You're purchasing the land, so you got that carrying cost? Is that what's keeping you from pushing the variances and just going the extra timing?
I don't know if the extra gets me anything I want to do. Again,
well, I'll give you an example.
Okay.
Right? We had on Summit Avenue. We just we were looking at a 46 unit approval. Had a historic property on it. It already had variances on the 46 unit approval, and we went in and turned it around and turned it into 82 units.
Okay.
With variances. They had 9 units of affordable housing. In return, we had to go from 9 units affordable to 11 units affordable, right? And then we got affordable housing money on top of it. It took an extra, I want to say 5 to 6 months to get those approvals, but well worth it. The value add was there.
When was this? How many years ago was this?
2.
Okay. I don't know. Again, I am very conservative in what I do, especially with other people's money. This is always other people's money. I mean, my money is in it as well. I always put in the minimum that is required as a LP investor.
Well, we won't take on the acquisition until we get the approvals. So if there's any money that we're laying out, it's really to hold the contract, throw money in for the approvals, which you could end up spending maybe $100,000, $150,000 all in. But the contract will be contingent on approvals. So getting that additional value and just not buying the land before the variance.
I'm with you. It's what you operate your world. I operate my world.
Yeah, I'm curious to know what stops you.
I as a right. I mean, I stand in front of a community group or the planning board or the historic board or the zoning board, and this is as of right. You guys wrote the rules. I'm following the rule. I mean, if the Army taught me anything, I mean, there's a book for everything. Literally, there's a book for everything, like how to drink out of a canteen. I mean, there is a book for everything. Show me the rule book, and I will execute the hell out of that rule book to a level that you don't understand. Yeah. Once you start opening the Pandora's box on the variances, you have everybody from Mrs. McGillicuddy across the street that wants to see something and not shade her whatever tree to somebody who's on some council somewhere that's got some other kind of
it also delays you. Just delays.
It does delay, and that's my point about the 2008 or the guys that showed up to clean the windows of the world or the Rainbow Room on September 11th, 2001. You're in the wrong place at the wrong time. I don't want to be the guy that's going sideways over a deal that is of my own creating.
Well, it's worked out for you because over a short period of time, you were able to accumulate over 400 units. So it works.
20 years isn't that short of a time.
I mean, listen, I was just talking to another developer just yesterday and he was like, oh, I got in the game late. I could have been more. And I said, listen, there are people who have achieved maybe a portion of what you've achieved already. So
my investors say it all the time. I should have put more money with you. I go, I told you to put more money with me, but you didn't do it.
Right.
And all of my people are kind of playing on the house's money right now. Like let's say 100,000 is the minimum to get in. Like the 100,000 they put in on, let's say 6th Street, rolled into 7th Street, and that 100, and then they got paid on that. And that 100, that marker kept rolling into each project thereafter. What I would have liked is you got to let it ride, but they don't let it ride. They peel something off the top and they let the 100 ride, as opposed to letting that 100 turn into 150, that turns into 225, that turns into 400, and I don't have to go out and get 60 people to be involved. I can get 6, which is a lot easier to manage 6 people than it is to manage 60 people. Although at this point in life, everyone's pretty cool with what's going on. I mean, as long as things don't go badly, well, things can go badly. You just have to communicate it. And communicate ahead of time, and a lot of communication, because most people don't read their first email. So, what's going on right now? in the city. I mean, the city is 200. I mean, as was reported in the New York Times like 48 hours ago, the city's a $225 million budget deficit.
I thought it was 250.
I thought it was 225. Yeah. Whatever it is.
Whatever it is, it's very high.
It's a lot of money. And the blame game, whatever, it's still got to get paid at some point. So that's going to be reduction in services, increase in taxes, or free money from the government or the bigger government. And I don't know what combination of those three things are going to happen, but that's difficult. But I communicated that, out to all my investors in December, the mayor of New York.
Did you know that was coming?
I mean, the election was obvious.
No. Did you know that there was a deficit ahead of time?
I mean, not personally, but I know what the campaign rhetoric was. But like, let's go back to, the mayor of New York saying what he's saying. There's 51 people on the city council of New York. I mean, that's a lot of obstruction that goes on to get things done. There's only 9 people on the Jersey City council, and 6 of them ran with mayor. So things are going to cruise through Jersey City that may or may not cruise through New York, which is what I communicated. So we'll see.
What do you think will happen? How do you think they'll fix the
I don't know.
issue?
I just said those 3 things. I mean, the only thing you can do is, is reduce services, increase taxes, or get a bailout. So maybe the state of New Jersey.
Create more housing, create more revenue, perhaps.
Not in an annual
You would
budget.
think?
Well, but that's the long term. You can't do this
Overnight.
by the time the budget's ready, right? I mean, this needs to happen this fiscal year,
Right.
which is we're already into it.
Right.
So it's only the 3 things I just said. And I don't think you can cut, what are you going to cut? That's $200 billion,
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's a big issue.
Less
It's a
salt.
big issue. How are your investors? Less salt. I noticed outside that there's less salt on the ground.
No.
How are your investors reacting to the budget crisis here? Are they saying anything?
No, I don't think as far as they're concerned, I'm the prism in which the information is shot from Jersey City, since I'm here every day. I give them my opinion. And no one's playing with this is all small sums of money for most people. And again, most people in my group are playing with the house's money at this point. They've gotten most of their money back. I mean, my goal is to get you your money back as quickly as possible, because I'm paying for your money while I'm holding it. So there is no reason for me to sit around for years. Like, I need to get you your money back. Or it digs a hole for me that I'll never get out of.
Right.
And then you can't have, again, communication is key, but you can have a bad deal, but you can't have a series of bad deals. You can't go from one bad deal to the next bad deal. Otherwise, you're looking for a new job.
Absolutely.
Or you're rebranding yourself as somebody else. And once you start doing that, I don't know, people look at you sideways, and I don't like that. I'm a pretty stand-up.
Go back to the Army.
I'm a pretty stand-up kind of guy. The Army is what made the Jersey City thing work for me. I mean, I'm not from Hudson County. I'm not from the state of New Jersey. I'm not from a real estate development family. I'm not from any of this stuff. It's funny. I told you the practical reason why I got into real estate, but something that was told to me 10 years later. I'm having dinner with my wife and a couple of her friends, and same question, how'd you get into this? I tell them my story. Start telling my life story a little bit. And she's like, my life story is that I went into the Army because we had no money to send me to college. My dad hit the skids at about the age of 60. We lost our house to foreclosure. My mom moved out, went on Section 8 in Buffalo. My dad was couch surfing at the age of 60. The Fiorito family, like the center of gravity, went away, like the homestead, if you will. That went away. My siblings all started their own life, and I jettisoned into the military. And I didn't come back for 10 years. I mean, I literally went into the Army and did not come back. I was stationed in Texas for my first 5 years, and I was stationed in Germany for another 4 years, and then back to New York for ROTC. But I never came back because there was really nothing to come back to in many of those cases. So I'm telling this story, and one of the people that were with at dinner, she's like, "You don't see some kind of psychological connection to the fact that you were evicted from your home and went into foreclosure, and your mom's in Section 8 housing, that you build housing today?" I go, "Not until you just said that."
Yeah.
I really didn't have any kind of connection on that, on the real estate stuff.
Well, you even talked about that in the military, you felt like you had a higher purpose.
Oh,
right?
you're doing something. You're doing
something important. And then you went from the military to manufacturing these
Bath and Body Works stuff.
Right,
hey, you're doing something for somebody who forgot their wife's anniversary.
Do you see the connection between the higher purpose of the military and the fact that you're building housing?
Maybe
I mean,
having a purpose maybe is the thing. The military thing helped me out a lot because I was, because I'm not from here. I was John the Army guy. I was John the Army guy for 5 years at the building department back in the day where you could pull your number and sit there in the waiting room at 30 Montgomery. You could pull your number and sit in the waiting for 8 hours.
Yeah.
And you could come back the next day with that same number because you weren't getting called on. You could sit there for days. But I was John the Army guy, which really kind of helped out because there's a lot of shady stuff that goes down. And I got one of Mr. Perez's buildings down 6th Street. We bought it. Garbage stopped getting picked up. I'm like, okay, what's good? The super calls me up. He's like, they're not picking up the garbage. I said, okay. So I come down to the next garbage pickup day. Sanitation guy shows up, truck shows up. I'm like, what's going on here? He's like, the garbage cans they're overloaded, they're too heavy. So I pick up a garbage can. I go, this isn't overloaded. What's going to make this any lighter? He goes, $100. I go, are you kidding me? Nice. I go, I'm getting shaken down by a sanitation guy in Hudson County. Like, this is so Sopranos. I said, all right, so no, but we'll take care of the garbage. So I called Mr. Perez because I don't know anybody. I'm like, what do I do? He's like, don't worry, take care of it. On Thursday, the garbage went away. And it kept going away. That has happened. That kind of thing. I mean, I've had, before the Solomon Dweck thing at the building department, before the blue windbreaker showed up, there was stuff going down that was not great. Most all those guys have been fired. But I had inspectors asking me for money. But I can never. I'd say I can appreciate what you're doing, but I can't do this. I'm a former federal officer, which is true. I was an officer in the Army. I'm a former federal officer, and I have classmates and people that are in the ATF and the FBI and all these other 3-letter agencies, and I can't bring discredit upon, my organization or them on doing stuff like this. So I totally understand this is the way business is done. I just can't do it.
Right.
And once you start talking like that, they move on to somebody else. That was the early years. I mean, that was very, very, we're talking 2005, 6,
yep.
7. And then, and that was kind of it. So I really credit my military, background and stuff to this. On top of that, spending the amount of time I did in the Army and doing what I did in the military gives some credibility to me as a real estate developer. Not that I'm an expert in real estate or development or anything, but that I execute operational tasks well. And whether it's in the Army taking a men and material or resources essentially and apply them against a project to get a mission complete, it's kind of the same thing in building your, if the mission is to build a building and here are the sub steps to do the building and here are the resources you have, which is contractors and money and attorneys for approvals and designers for whatever, all that stuff. You manage all those individual organizations and people towards a common goal. It's kind of the same thing. Right.
But I also see values, right? I see that going back to what I said before was that, you had this higher purpose in the military, right? And here now you're building housing for people. Like, do you sense that?
It didn't. I am not at all. Listen, I'm not an altruist. I'm not going to sit on your podcast and talk about how I'm altruistic on things.
Honestly,
I did my pitch though. I mean, what I feel like, American dreamish kind of thing. I did my thing for God, country, and the American people for 14 years. So now I am here to go make money, which I do well.
Right.
And at the same time, providing lower cost housing in a high cost environment, which is Jersey City. So it's not altruistic. They go together in what I do.
Right.
And I'm happy that it works out for everybody involved.
Right.
And I think I have a pretty good reputation in the city.
It's better than manufacturing the Bath and Body Works in Cincinnati.
I keep saying that, but I mean, I'm telling you, there is some guy who forgot his wife's birthday and shows up with this smelly basket of candles and lotions, and he wins. Like, hey, some small victories.
You can use those gifts for your tenants.
You could.
Right. So what's next for you?
I don't know at the moment. Again, I'm
looking for deals?
Playing landlord at the moment. No. If you're looking for a deal, it's been floated around to somebody else. Deals don't come to the awareness of anybody until they've been passed over by somebody else. So no, I am not necessarily looking for deals. I'm involved with a couple things that are on the not back burner per se, but they're there. I just don't think the time is opportune to get involved in a risk asset right now. I mean, Generally speaking, I would say from the last cycle, building something during a recession, which we're not in a recession, but building something during a recession is not a bad time to do it because, things are less expensive and work is cheaper and all that kind of stuff. But we are in a unknown world. I mean, from the federal level in geopolitics, which affects finance, all the way down to the local administration on what their plan is for the next 4 years in Jersey City. There's a lot of uncertainty on stuff, and uncertainty is not a great thing for business. So again, we improve our buildings. Something like the Baker Building's 10 years old. We're doing. That's when all your appliances start failing, right? You got to do stuff to your properties so that you still get the dollar figure you're looking for to maintain the properties, right? Otherwise, you get into this like doom loop of New York 1976 kind of thing, which we don't want to happen in Jersey City. Sure. So we improve the properties, increase the enhance the experience for the residents. Ask them constantly like, what do you want? What can we do for you besides lower the rent? Besides free rent and free beer tomorrow, what else can we do for you? And all our residents are pretty cool on all that stuff. We do like curate our resident base. I mean, because we are not, the word luxury does not show up any of our advertising. We are not luxury housing. I'm not affordable housing. Well, my housing is affordable with a small a, not a big A. You bring a big A involved in it.
Relative to the waterfront and all the shiny buildings that are
if you bring a big A into the conversation, you bring the government along, and the government doesn't make anything cheaper for the
You just don't
people.
market it that way.
I do not. Yeah. But you have to be of a certain kind of intestinal fortitude to live in one of our buildings. And we do not have a doorman. There's not someone picking up your laundry for you or cleaning up after you. I mean, like I say all the time, like your mom doesn't work here. Pick your stuff up. Like we run, the reason why it's more inexpensive to live in a Point Capital building is because we run very lean on stuff. We don't have excess staff running around or someone answering the phone constantly for whatever's going on. You have to be somewhat self-sufficient. I mean, that's the trade-off on your 35% reduction in rent. Like there is not somebody you're going to call right now and someone's going to show up right now because of whatever reason you think is an emergency. Emergency is life, limb, eyesight, and significant property damage. Right. After those four things, you fall into a category of priorities that, your whatever you've got going on may or may not fall into that category. Well,
so when you're looking at, well, I shouldn't say you're looking at deals right now, but you're looking at the market right now, and you feel like there's too much risk in politics, there's too much risk in acquisitions. You're seeing market risks, right?
Well, too much risk here. I'm building, so I should say that everything I'm talking about is Jersey City. I'm doing a self-storage facility in Verona, which is, I live in Verona.
Oh, so you're getting outside of
a little bit
residential as
well. I'm doing a spec house in Park City, Utah.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I am not comfortable what's going. I mean, I shouldn't say I'm not comfortable.
What are you seeing? What are you seeing that makes you uncomfortable in this New York City regional market?
The rhetoric.
The rhetoric.
I mean, it's always a rhetoric. $1,000 rents, fair share, whatever, greedy developers,
so politics
that kind of stuff.
Is making it unstable for you.
Certainly. I don't know if unstable is the correct word. We'll see if the campaign rhetoric turns into policy or not, or the reality of governing like a snowstorm, smacks you in the forehead and says, you got to get the trains running on time, before you can start doing a bunch of other stuff. Like let's get the operational excellence back into the city government.
As well, if you're thinking this way, it makes you wonder, like, how many other developers are thinking this way, and what does that do for affordability?
If you're not in the ground right now, I can't imagine anybody who would start a project right now if you're not already in the ground, unless of course you're one of those developers who's 90-10, who's giving all the risk, to their investor, and they make money for breaking ground, and they make money every time they hit a threshold. So if you're that kind of developer where you put a shovel in the ground, you get to pay yourself, and you get to go vertical, you pay yourself, even if mathematically that project is never going to work.
And there are a lot of guys like that.
You just keep doing it to get paid for each threshold, and when you hit your waterfall, you get paid, and when the thing goes sideways, you just walk away from it because you're not really in the equity side of it anyway.
What do you tell investors when they're looking to invest in a project? what do you tell them to watch out for those type of deals?
I'm pseudo consulting a friend on his operating agreement right now, which my operating agreement is like 40 some odd pages long. And it's written in pseudo plain English. There's only so much legalese you can pull out of an operating agreement to rewrite it in plain English. But he sent me a copy of a 7-page operating agreement for a development project. And it is so woefully detailed that it just screams his partner is going to make the project. He's going to put the project in default. To me, it reads like a story that it's very ambiguous. What's going to happen, we don't know. But when it does happen, because we planned it to happen badly, we're going to cram you down and make you a minority partner in a project where you're the majority partner. So I would say reading your operating agreements and making sure you know who does what to who when things go sideways. Your contract and your operating agreement is only for when things go badly. When things go good and everyone's slapping each other on the back, that's fine. And nobody cares. It is when things go south, when financing rates go through the roof, when you don't get your municipal upgrades, your GC goes bankrupt. I mean, I had that issue. Katerra went bankrupt in the middle of one of my projects. I mean, that's a big deal. A multi-billion-dollar company going bankrupt, not because of the local guys in the Northeast, but because of the West Coast guys doing something silly. I mean, we had just topped off the superstructure of 130 Monitor Street, and I get an email that says, hey, nobody's showing up for work on Friday because, Katerra just went under. Now, so I GC'd that project. So that I got my license, I increased my GL, my GL
Which
insurance.
project was this?
130 Monitor, the 70 units at 130 Monitor.
That's where Katerra folded?
Yeah, we went into the.
You had to take it over.
Took it over. We went into the ground in February 2020. Topped off around May of 2020. Yeah, May of 2020.
Okay. Mechanical's done or no?
No, nothing. Just a superstructure.
Just a frame.
Just a superstructure. And COVID obviously is the rules in Jersey City for COVID were actually pretty good. I have to give credit to the former administration on that too. Everything about COVID, I would have been on the other side of it. Been like, no, keep the bars open. No, keep work going. But it was done correctly. The shutdown, the reopening of businesses was done well. The building department was able to operate. I mean, housing was seen as smartly. Housing was seen as a necessary projects that had to go on. So all the housing projects continued, which was exceedingly smart. So we didn't really take too much of a slowdown on that. But anyway, in the interim, from March when COVID happened through June, I lost my GC. And again, it wasn't the local guys. It was corporate in Seattle that went under. And I had to take over the job, which was a big job.
And you had all the relationships were maintained?
It was. I just hired everybody. I mean, literally,
you just threw everybody off and put.
I didn't throw anybody off anything. I sent them all an email on Friday.
Because everything was already bidded out, right? You
correct.
Had all
With
your
SoftBank, SoftBank had started. SoftBank was the funding source for Katerra. Or at least a partial funding source for Katerra. And there was something in the Wall Street Journal around Christmas time in 2019 where that was something was going on there. And then around March is when SoftBank said they're pulling all funding from Katerra. I stopped paying my requisitions right around April of 2020 until I got some answers. And the answers were not forthcoming. The company went under. And I was able to I had 2 months of requisitions that I was able to pay the subcontractors who hadn't got paid yet either. So everybody showed up they went under on Friday afternoon. Monday morning, everybody showed up. They signed subcontracts over to me as the owner. I paid everybody the 2 months that was back. I hired all of the Katerra guys that were working on my job under Point Capital Development. So everybody had a job. So really nothing happened. I had one subcontractor out of 30 that tried to do some shenanigans, not shenanigans, but try to kind of think they were holding more cards than they did. And they didn't. And everything was fine. So, right. and the building completed. So but I'll tell you that story, there's a lot of people who call themselves developers who do not develop anything. All they do is write a check. those guys, I think, got crushed in the downturn of stuff. Like, if you didn't see that coming, if you didn't recognize that your general contractor was on the verge of bankruptcy or didn't get a heads up or anything, and all of them, they stopped showing up, and you already paid them for work that got sucked up into some bankruptcy thing that probably didn't go to your local guys. It got sucked up to corporate and got paid out somewhere else, not locally. That's a problem. And I think there's a lot of guys.
There were very few that were able to like get in there, self-perform, and get the project done.
Right. So
and that goes a long way. If you can offer that to your investors, to your partners, the fact that your GC folds, you're able to take it over, that's a huge plus.
Oh, there
You're that kind of guy. I'm that kind of guy. I know some other people.
Hands-on. I'm a hands-on kind of guy. That's why when I call myself owner's rep, I'm more like
you can swing a hammer.
I'm like the pit bull. I could say I work hard on the way in here, right? I mean,
Well, yesterday when I called you, you were like, I said, what are you doing? I was like, I'm in the meter room. We're changing a meter with the Guarini.
Yes, with the MUA.
Right. I just imagined that picture of you, like, boots on the ground.
So
looking at the meters.
I'm going back to the Army with
cranking a wrench.
I'm going with the Army. So I was on a tank in the Army. So there's 4 crewmen on a tank: the driver, the loader, the gunner, and the tank commander. And you don't get to be the tank commander unless you were the gunner. You don't get to be the gunner unless you were the loader. And you don't get to be, the loader's kind of the extra guy, and then the driver. So if you're a tank commander, you would have to do all of those jobs before you get to be a commander, because so you know what all those jobs do. Crawl, walk, run kind of methodology from the military. So that was that. The other thing is I was a maintenance officer. One of my jobs was a maintenance officer. And the Army has what's called a MAC chart, a manpower allocation chart or something. Essentially, it's a book that tells you how long something should take. So if you're going to change a tire on a Humvee, there's a book that tells you, 1, how to do it, and 2, how long it should take to do it in a garage environment versus motor environment versus being out in the field in the mud and whatnot. But it tells you it takes X amount of minutes to do this. And so I brought that with me into the construction world. 1, crawl, walk, run. There's nothing anybody has ever done in any of my projects ever that I physically haven't done. And that goes from the welding steel guy to the underground plumbing guy, to the electric guy, to the roofing guy, to the whatever guy. Like, I have physically touched every piece of equipment that operates in any of my buildings, not because I'm an expert at it or anything like that, just to know how long something takes to do. And when you're in a high-rise building and it's January and it's supposed to be, or now it's February, and it's supposed to be 20-degree wind chill, negative 20-degree wind chill tomorrow, and the windows aren't sealed shut, and you got electricians that are pulling wire in this thing, something's going to get screwed up. Guaranteed. I mean, it's not part of the contract that it's super uber cold outside and you haven't put any conditioning inside the building, but you're expecting your electrical contractor to complete his scope of work or their scope of work on target, on time. But if you stand in that building tomorrow morning when the wind's blowing through it, nothing's going to happen tomorrow morning at all. So, or what does get pulled in wire is not going to work.
Right.
At some point, the building's going to be done and be flipping a light switch and go, that doesn't work. I bet that was Saturday, February 6th, when it was 20 degrees below zero, when the guy was warming his fingers up, not pulling the wire correctly. Right. So anyway, it goes back to crawl, walk, run, know what people are doing. I don't need to do their job to know their job, but you've got to have at least put your toe in the water.
Or when they're giving you a BS change order.
Correct.
And you know what goes into it, right?
That is 100% correct. I spent a lot of time with the guys. I mean, not the foreman per se or the owners of the company. I am on the job site constantly chatting with the dudes.
Yeah, there are not a lot of developers that know all this stuff.
Oh, that's why I'm still in business.
No, right. All right, man. This is awesome.
All right, we're done?
You want to keep going? We can keep going.
I mean,
what do you got?
It's up to you. No,
it's up to you.
Is there anything else you want to know? I think I've told you my life story.
We got a little bit into politics. I would have liked to go into a little bit more. You were a little worried about the current administration?
I'm not necessarily worried about the current administration. I mean, I don't think that any administration wants to do poorly, right? So I feel like you're going to do what they think is correct for their constituents. I just don't know, in the big scheme of things, if what is politically sellable, like, free rent or something like that is a realistic type of thing. So again, like I said before, there is campaign rhetoric on how people get elected for stuff, and then there is how people govern after they are elected. And so, time will tell on that respect. And the mayor was a councilman for the last 8 years, so he knows, generally speaking, where the bodies are buried on stuff. And this is a very small town.
But it's all a business model. At the end of the day, it's like, housing has to work for everybody, right? It's not just for the people who live in the units, but it's also for the people who build it.
Of course.
Because if you can't build it,
and
I already see your hesitance to build new stuff. And like I said, like if you're thinking this way, how many other developers are thinking this way?
Everybody. You should get housing authorities in here. Get NYCHA in here, Jersey City Housing Authority. If the government can't make housing working and they don't have to pay property tax and they don't have to pay,
and that's a huge problem. So you're killing the supply, right? The demand keeps growing. Things are going to get more and more expensive.
The only thing I would say politically, it seems that the government tends to lag behind the market and things. The time to throw affordable housing on things was when people were printing money in 2000 and whatever, pick your time, not to strangle the goose that laid the golden egg during a downturn. Like at this point, things should be helpful, not hurtful. Mm-hmm. And then when things get back on their feet, that's when you start going after certain things. I did an affordable housing project on 4th Street with a grant from the DCA, Department of Community Affairs. Hurricane Sandy, Superstorm Sandy funding and whatnot. Mm-hmm. It was the most difficult thing. I was doing affordable housing before anybody.
How many units?
4.
4.
4 units of affordable housing with a grant from the DCA. It took forever to get anything through the city. This is before people could pronounce affordable housing. It didn't really matter. It was right after Sandy, so it was 2013 or 14. People were not talking about this at all. It was a grant. I just had to show that I wasn't a criminal, essentially, and that I was somewhat competent and stuff. And I needed a letter from the mayor's office, which took me forever to get. The legal department wouldn't sign it. This is for a $750,000 grant to build 4 units of affordable housing on 4th Street, downtown, where, they've got the haves and the have-nots going on, like putting affordable housing on 4th Street. And it was Herculean. I actually had to I could not get a meeting with legal or the mayor's office to sign off on this one form. It was hard.
And this was the last administration or the
last administration. Eventually we funded it personally because it was a small project. So we funded it personally and then went back.
I got the money.
And then retroactively, it was just so hard. And so the administrator for that grant calls me up after it's all over. He's like, you want to do another one? I was like, no. Never. I would never do another one again. The other thing about affordable housing, people don't want affordable housing. People want less expensive housing. That is completely different than affordable housing. People don't know how much money they make, for real. Because when I did the lottery for these 4 apartments, I don't think people really understand what that affordability means. That's a low income, the very low income, the moderate income, market rate income, like workforce housing. There's so many different categories of people that have to fit into this, the legal definition of it. And so for those projects, you had to have somebody, that top line number, they were making $40,000, 30 something, about 39-ish or whatever, and they couldn't make more than 43. Like the window was exceedingly small that if you didn't make 39 grand, you couldn't afford it. If you made 43, you made too much. Right. And therefore this window, we interviewed 60, and you don't do the interview yourself. You have to hand it over to a third party that does the interview process for you. And then they hand you qualified applicants. And so 60 people applied for these 4 units. And the vast majority of them were turned away because they made too much money. And people were shocked on how much money. It's not your take-home pay. It's your top line W-2, what you make as that, and how much you couldn't make above. And the problem with this narrow window on the Jersey City 07302 zip code, for this affordability requirement for a 1-bedroom apartment in Essex County, blah, blah, or on Hudson County, blah, blah. If you got a raise the next year, you might be priced out of this, meaning you got to recertify every year. So I had to recertify these 4 people every year for the affordability aspect of it. And if they got a bump in pay, or heaven forbid, family formation, where you have someone getting married. Now a family of two is in a 1-bedroom apartment and they're both making 39 grand. So now they're way over. Now a 2-person household is different than a 1-person household, obviously, but it's not double. And so now you have to move, or I can't certify you, or now I'm in violation of housing code stuff for affordability because I have somebody in there who's making 50 grand and they're only allowed to make 43 grand. It was so hard. I would never do it again. And I go back to people don't want affordable housing. They want less expensive housing, because once you introduce the affordable aspect into it, there are so many different rules that you've got to follow that people have no concept of. People want affordable housing are affordable housing developers who get that capital stack, which is it's another whole podcast. And people who want to advocate for it. And that's it. Now, real people don't really want affordable housing. Yeah. They want things to be they want their housing to be less expensive. And the only way that happens is to increase supply.
They want more choices. Just more housing in general.
I'll tell you, what blows my mind on this whole topic of supply and demand, it's a very easy curve. It's like an X. Supply goes up, demand goes down. Everybody should understand it's really not that hard. Everybody should really understand it, because COVID was a global case study on this entire thing. Everybody left the urban areas and moved to rural or suburban areas. Rents plummeted in suburban in cities. Plummeted. Like, everybody left. Demand went down. Supply went up. Cost went down. It was only 5 years ago. Everybody saw it. I just don't understand why people cannot grasp the fact that increasing supply decreases demand, which increases affordability. It's really not very hard, which goes back to my main conspiracy theory that nobody wants affordable housing. They want to talk about it. They want to have a boogeyman that they can slay. There's no Republicans in Essex and Hudson County. There's nobody to fight with. So you have to fight with something else. So let's fight with the amorphous boogeyman, which is affordable housing.
And fight with developers.
The
bad guys.
Just for the fun of it. First of all, it's greedy developers. Greedy landlords, greedy developers, slumlords, and that kind of stuff. So
yeah, it's crazy.
I got me fired up on that. It must have been the espresso kicked in finally.
No, it's I don't understand why they don't get it, because it's very simple. Just build more housing. That's it.
I know, but you don't want to build more housing, because if you build more housing, it decreases the value of your constituents. Like the property owners that live in whatever community don't want their houses devalued by more housing coming in. And they certainly don't want affordable housing coming in. So they don't want it. And those are the people that vote. So it's something to talk about. It is, and it's a self-created thing. Who created the constriction? Who constricts the building of housing? The same people who are saying we need more affordable housing. It's total.
It's funny. I was going for an approval on 2nd Street, which is doing 12 units, and the whole neighborhood came out against building these 12 units. And the people that were the loudest, I asked them questions. I said, where do you live? And they said, well, we live in this building here that's rent control. I said, so you already have a unit. That tells you a lot. Right? Mm-hmm. That most of the people that were complaining already have units. They don't need the housing. They just don't want anybody else to have it.
There's Dennis Miller, the comedian, says the difference between an environmentalist and a developer. An environmentalist owns a house in the woods. A developer wants to build a house in the woods. So that's the only reason.
Good stuff.
Cool, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're going to head to Milano's or Caggiano's or some other Aniano's for lunch now.
Want to grab some lunch?
Absolutely. So,
good stuff.
Nice, Ben.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, thanks for coming by. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like the video or drop a quick comment or question. I'd love to hear what stood out to you most. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, a quick rating or review goes a long way to reach more people who care about these kinds of conversations. And of course, hit subscribe wherever you're watching or listening so you don't miss what's coming next. See you on the next episode.